Hey there, everybody. My name's Sam Byler. I'm the co-founder and CEO here at Boostpoint. Excited to bring Trent on today's conversation. Trent, I've been following your stuff a while on LinkedIn. Really appreciate the content that you put out there in the world. Super helpful, especially to people in the B2B SaaS sales world. So welcome onto the conversation.
Thank you, Sam.
Trent, so what I want to dig into here in this interview a little bit is looking, at again, we're in the recruitment space, talent acquisition space. We talk with TA teams all the time about like the candidate journey, and like what the workforce, what's the optimal candidate journey that organizations can build to attract the best employees. We hear a lot from like the employer side on that. What I'd love to do here is look at like from the candidate side more so. And like you and your career, like I want to just dig into some of the things around, you looking for that opportunity. So maybe let's start, when you entered, the workforce out of college, what was that experience for you in looking for that, your first career opportunity?
In 2018, I was graduating college at Ohio University. And to tell you the truth, I really didn't know where I would be or what exactly I would be doing. My North Star was sales. I wanted to get in sales. I didn't really have a type of sales. I had a smart friend at the time, and I asked him, I said, "Hey, what are you going to do?" And he said, "Enterprise software sales." And I heard that, and I had no idea what it meant. I remember looking up and thinking, man, that sounds pretty cool working in the tech industry, but I never had really thought about it since. I went into my senior year believing I would get a sales job. I wanted to leave the state of Ohio. So when I started to embark upon my job search, I used the resources at my disposal. So I was a part of a sales organization. We had an upcoming career fair. There were 40 partner companies that were attending the career fair. So I looked through all the companies. I filtered down to about 11 of them that were hiring for sales jobs outside the state of Ohio. I went up to each individual booth. I spoke with them. I said, "I'd like to get an interview with you. Here's my resume," and did whatever I could to lock down that interview. Fast forward, had dozens of interviews and ended up getting hired at a software company and moving to the state of Texas to start my career in software sales. So it was a really cool experience, a lot of rejection along the way. And I almost ended up at Camping World selling RVs. So I feel really fortunate that I ended up in the tech industry and things played out the way they did.
So let's talk about that a little. Someone in your shoes back then, you maybe didn't have the Rolodex, in your resume to, maybe land some of those jobs that you were thinking about, and you had to go through quite a bit of that, rejection. What are some of the things that, people can do, as they're looking for their next opportunity? Say they're trying to level up a little bit, but it's like, man, I really don't have the Rolodex for that position. What are some of the things that they can do to still have a shot at some of those like dream positions?
Yeah. I didn't know what a dream position was for me. And I think that was the problem. And that's what perhaps limited my potential. I never had an internship. I never had past sales experience. I didn't have any mentors. So I didn't really think ahead to the point where, well, how do I optimize my experience and then set myself up to move to one of these big cities and get to one of the best employers? I just didn't have the information. I didn't know what I was looking for. So if I could go back and give myself the advice, I would start by asking, well, hey, Trent, what do you want? What is important about this? What is preventing you from having it? And how will you know when you have gotten it? And I would start to go through this exercise to actually identify and write down what I want. Is when I speak with people today that are looking for jobs, they just vaguely think, well, I want to work from home and I want to make a lot of money. That's
Yeah.
great. Okay, so what specific preferences do you have? Do you want to work for a private company, a public company? Do you want to be selling software? Do you want to be selling hardware? Do you want to move or do you want to work fully remote? Do you want to work for a 5,000 employees or 100 employees? What do you want to work for? And once you're really specific on your preferences and why that's important, I think that's a really important step to then putting together an action plan to actually begin to build that Rolodex, because just because you don't have the connections now doesn't mean you can't go find those connections during the job hunt process to increase your odds of getting the best job possible.
There you go. I love that. So let's talk through the rejection piece a little bit, because I think this is something that a lot of people maybe aren't quite prepared for, as the level of rejection that you kind of need to endure, unfortunately, in the job search. It sounds like you've developed a little bit of thick skin being in sales a while, and the rejection that you face like on a day-to-day basis there from potential clients. But let's talk about that a little bit. Like, what was your experience there, maybe, initially, launching your career, and some of the rejection that you had to face and endure through some of that?
The quick answer is you can control your inputs, but you cannot control the actual results, meaning you can control putting together the best resume, the best application, doing all the networking in the world, showing up as your best self to the interview. You can do everything right, but you still cannot control them giving you an offer. And that's the reality of putting yourself out there in a highly competitive world. So one must accept that to then liberate themselves from the feeling of not trying due to fearing the rejection. So once you get that past that point, it's then getting as many at-bats as possible. So for context to everyone listening, I worked 5 years in software sales. I promoted 6 times, found a lot of success. I built up a fairly large personal brand on YouTube, LinkedIn, 70,000 followers, talking about sales. So after I ended my career tenure at my previous software company, which was a public SaaS company, $1 billion recurring revenue, reputable company, I decided I wanted to test myself in the job market. So I made a short list of top companies I wanted to work for. I found a Silicon Valley unicorn, 1.6 billion valuation, Series C, 150 employees, brightest future ahead. They're hiring for one sales position requiring 10 years of experience. I don't have the experience, but I'm still going to apply anyway because I believe I would be a good fit. I believe I have a lot of value to offer. I put together a video of me selling the product. I sent an email to the VP of sales. He introduced me to the recruiter. I set up an interview. So I got an interview in less than a week with this company, and I got rejected after the first round. So I share all that to say is go for roles you aren't qualified for, because you'll be the most excited about those and it will actually set your future up. But secondly, you can think you're the person, the most qualified, that you can do it. You know it would work out, but they can still tell you no, and that's just the reality of the situation. So seek out as many no's as you can, because it only takes one yes.
There you go. There you go. Great advice. Um, so there's a lot of interesting data, and this definitely, the caveat to this is there's a lot of different types of positions, and you've got sales, but then you've even got this huge gamut of sales positions. You've got hourly, salary, but there's some data out there that it takes about 1 to 200 applications for a job seeker to apply for to find that one job. What's been your experience, and just let's talk through that a little bit, as far as, like, to me it seems like there's a little bit of something broken in this whole, like, job seeking experience, that it takes that many job applications for a lot of people to finally connect with the one employer where they find their next thing.
It's a supply and demand problem to me. So if you look at the actual employer side, they want to hire qualified talent to help them grow their business. They will pay a salesperson 10% of closed revenue, and they hope to pay you 100 grand a year, and you're going to generate $1 million in business for the year. And especially in B2B, they can start to quantify this. Okay, we get 100 salespeople, we'll hit our target. So when they're looking to fulfill that position, they want to bring in someone that not only has the aptitude to be able to perform, but also would be a good culture fit. So as you look at the other side of the equation, the actual potential employees that are applying to the job, many of them may be a good fit, but many of them may not be a good fit. So for those more ambitious out there like myself, you're going to probably apply to roles you're not qualified for, which may disqualify you before you even get into the gate. A lot of people applying probably are quick applying on LinkedIn. Many other people are applying, don't even know what the company does, but they're just applying because it says 150K OTE fully remote, for example. So I think there's a lot of confusion in the marketplace, and there's not necessarily a quick solution to this. So what I think, at least from the employee standpoint, is after you've applied through a role, you know that 200 applications for that role are going in the system. Maybe it's going to automatically reject some. Maybe it's going to filter some for the recruiter to then manually sift through to then decide who to give an interview or not. I think it comes down to the person applying to then take the process into their own hands and begin to reach out to the people at the company who can influence their career, whether it be finding the recruiter, hiring manager that's hiring for the role, the potential sales manager's team that you would go to, VP of sales, reaching out to them directly, like in the example I shared, sending the video and reaching out to them. So it's more of a manual approach for everyone involved and really inefficient. But yeah, I don't have a quick solution to fix that problem, but I think that there's just a lot of noise and everyone's trying to cut through it.
I completely agree with you. I appreciate your perspective on that, Trent, because that's what I seeing every day as well. Like a lot of candidates put way too much trust in the apply now button on Indeed. And it's like, all right, let's just go apply, 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 apply. And you think like, hey, I've done my job. And like, all right, like it should be that way. But the reality is like there's so many applications coming in through those because that's the way Indeed makes money. Is like, hey, when someone clicks that apply button, Indeed is paid. So there's a lot of encouragement to just like, hey, apply to so many jobs. But I think, like you said, taking some of that process like on your own shoulders and like I'm going to do something outside of that and try to make connections with those teams and influencers in those companies.
Yeah, and it's a problem for the people applying because they'll apply, they will feel like they were productive for the day, and then they'll sit on their hands for a week and waiting in the back of their head, giving the other party the ability to then control their fate. And it's a very reactive approach. So I think proactiveness is applying, but also doing everything you can to reach out and treat it like a sales cycle, especially for sales positions.
Great advice. What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions about the job search process?
From the employer or employee standpoint?
Employee standpoint, like I'm looking for a new job. It's like, hey, like, yeah, what are some of the big misconceptions?
Most people don't know what they're looking for. To the original point, what do you want? Most people can't answer that question quickly and simply. So they're at a they're at odds with themselves to begin with. So I think the biggest misconception is not knowing what they want. And then additionally is feeling confident in the value they bring. I feel that as a former employee, I've experienced the feeling of leverage, knowing that, hey, as an employee, I have leverage in this job market. There's a lot of money sloshing around, especially in tech. I could go get paid a lot more right now if I wanted to. There's endless options, endless mobility. As the market starts to tighten up, interest rates rise, these organizations perhaps aren't hiring for as many positions. There's the leverage now is back in the hands of the employer. So I think as an employee, just recognizing this dynamic of how much leverage do you actually have in the marketplace? Do you have an additional income stream aside from your W-2 in the event that you cannot land a job for the next 6 months? What are you going to be able to do? And most people haven't set themselves up to be able to withstand a setback financially. So let's say you lose your job and you need to go look for a new job. If you only can cover your expenses for the next 2 months, you're going to be much more likely to take a job that may not be the right fit for you long term, because short term it satisfies you getting money in the door to pay for your expenses. So I think people need to really look themselves in the mirror and understand what is their value in the marketplace and what skills do they have to not only make money on their own, but also bring value to an organization and help that organization grow. The closer you are to the actual revenue, the money in the door, the more valuable you are. If you're in the back office and you have no customer facing interactions, you are at much greater risk of being, let's say, laid off or paid less than counterparts that are directly responsible for generating revenue. So the biggest misconception is not embracing reality as it relates to skills, abilities, and the true value they bring.
So good. So good. If you really appreciate this, Trent, if you boil this down to like three things that, someone that's maybe currently working and trying to look for that advancement in their career, or currently out of a job and looking for that next opportunity, how would you boil down maybe like 2 or 3 solid tips that they can take away?
Something that's been on my mind recently, I'm rereading The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Would highly recommend everyone checks it out. And when you break down what a habit actually is, the author Stephen Covey, he says it's the intersection of knowledge, skill, and desire. So the knowledge is knowing what to do, the skill is knowing how to do it, and the desire is the burning passion of I'll do whatever it takes to then make it happen. So anyone that may be in the job market right now, think about, well, what are your current habits? What is your character? What roles are you applying to? What are you doing each and every day? When are you going to bed? How much water are you drinking? Are you working out? What information are you taking in daily? And how are you spending your time? And the more effective one can spend their time on higher leverage activities. So, for example, the difference between auto applying to 100 roles in an hour or really going deep with 10 companies that you truly want to work for, connecting with 3 people on LinkedIn at the company, beginning to reach out to them. That is the way to cut through the noise and to increase your odds of getting hired.
I love that. I love that. Awesome, Trent. Well, I think we're going to wrap up this conversation here. Really appreciate your time. If someone's curious about, you got a couple of things going on right now. If someone's curious about learning more about some of those things, how can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me, Trent Dressel, on LinkedIn, YouTube. But more importantly, anyone listening, they need to go request a Boostpoint demo right now.
Let's go.
If they have
Let's go,
budget.
Trent.
If you got budget, go request a demo.
Let's Awesome, Trent. Well, hey, I really enjoyed this conversation. Super valuable, Trent. Really thank you for sharing your perspective here. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, Sam. Thanks.
All right. And to everyone watching, thanks so much. And we'll see you on the next one.